As we mentioned earlier in the week, this course has been developed by faculty and staff affiliated with the CERTL network. The CERTL network has identified 3 core ideas that permeate all of its activities, and we'd like to take a few minutes now to talk about those core ideas, how we saw them this week in the course, and how we'll see them later in the course as well.
So the first core idea is called teaching as research. And it's just like the kind of research that you do in your domain science, where you gather data or collect evidence about a particular hypothesis to either confirm or refute it. So when you're doing teaching as research, you have a hypothesis about how you think students will best learn the material that you're trying to present to them and achieve certain learning objectives. So in the process of teaching as research, you actually deliberately measure whether or not students achieve those learning gains. You reflect on whether or not those students have achieved the gains that you want them to, and you can potentially change what you do the next time around in order to better meet those learning gains. And so it's a very iterative process and a very reflective process. But we emphasize the fact that it's a lot like your domain research and that the skills that you've gained training to be a STEM scientist will easily map onto your teaching. And so in week 2, we're going to spend quite a bit of time talking about how best to do those measurements of learning gains. We're going to tell you how best to We're going to work with you to develop learning objectives and to develop assessment tools that you can use to make those measurements.
A second core idea, as identified by the CERTL network, is the idea of learning communities. Now, there's a couple of kind of ideas that go with this. A course becomes a learning community when you have a sense of shared discovery and learning among all the participants in that course. So instead of just having an instructor who's kind of shaping the goals and objectives and kind of the only source of expertise or knowledge, you're acknowledging that everyone in the community has kind of a stake in the game and has goals and things that they want to learn and has something to offer that process as well. And so we talked about that this week in the context of the kinds of feedback that students need on their learning. They can get that feedback from each other, and that's a nice dynamic that happens when you've got a learning community. Students see each other as someone they can learn from and learn with. The other thing that I think that's important about learning communities is that the roles that people play in a learning community are fairly intentional. They're functional. You can't just have everyone show up and expect the learning community to happen. You have to plan intentionally about what roles students will play, what role you'll play, and what that learning process is going to look like. Later in the course, in weeks 3 and 4, we're going to look a lot at that aspect of learning communities. What are the processes and the structures and the kinds of problems that you can use to turn your course into a learning community? We'll look at cooperative learning and collaborative learning and problem-based learning, inquiry-based labs, peer instruction, other techniques you can use to help your students really learn from and with each other effectively.
The third core idea is learning through diversity. So the students that come into your classroom have a wide variety of background, experiences, and skills, and it's a great opportunity to harness that diversity and use it to fuel the learning process. We'll be talking quite a bit about learning through diversity later in the course, but Michele already introduced some really compelling and powerful stories about classroom climate and how that influences learning. Because in the process of bringing that diversity into the classroom, we also have to make sure that students feel included and comfortable about sharing those diversity of experiences, skills, and backgrounds in order to make the learning process richer for everyone. So we'll be talking quite a bit more about that as well.
We hope that we've given you a lot to think about already in the course, and we hope that you're excited about what's to come. We look forward to seeing you in the forum. Thanks.